Welcome, dear listener, to the Right Here, Right Queer podcast. I am Noah Hawthorne, and today I am joined by AK Mulford. Welcome.
Thank you for having me back.
Of course. So today it's just you. You don't have your co-writer in crime, and we're talking about Dreamslayer. Could you tell me what this book is about?
Yeah, of course. So, Dreamslayer is a sapphic dark fantasy that is about a dream acolyte who falls in love with a nightmare incarnate, and basically they get trapped in hell together and have to escape. So it's definitely a darker tone than my other romantasy books, and I've had a lot of fun writing it and going into the more kind of darker gothic world. In fact, I think I might stay in the pocket of that genre from now on.
Yeah, because your other books range like fantasy to contemporary. What made you want to go a little bit darker?
Actually, this book, funnily enough, is one of the first book ideas that I had as an adult. It started over 20 years ago now. The first kind of inspiration that had come out of quite a dark time in my life and out of grief of losing a friend and always turning to writing like I do with all things to kind of process those feelings. And at the time, a lot of the kind of thematic elements I was exploring, unfortunately, are very relevant today still. And so it was already kind of sitting there in my mind as something I knew I wanted to come back to, but I also felt like I didn't really have the technical skills to do the story justice the way I wanted to yet. And now, kind of 30 books into my career, I feel like I can really tell the story the way I wanted to. And also, with everything going on in the world, I felt kind of more relevant than ever that I needed to explore those themes and kind of figure out how I was feeling about it now, 2 decades later. So that's how that story kind of like came about. And I have two pen names, AK and Allie K. Mulford, very different, very creative names. But Allie K. Mulford does cozy rom-coms and is very much like kind of golden retriever, lighthearted side of me. And AK Mulford now is going more increasingly from the more lighthearted adventure romantasy into more darker thematic romantasy, which I think is kind of where I originally started when I was starting to write, but not where I started when I was starting to publish. So it's kind of almost a homecoming for me in a way, and I've been really enjoying it. Yeah.
It's very cathartic, I think, to be in the dark and, fantasy or anything like that. And I am really feeling what you're saying. And like High Mountain Court's first book of yours that I read, and like that had some darker elements, but it wasn't like a dark genre, if that makes sense.
Totally.
So I'm really looking forward to see just how deep you go, because I really need that catharsis as well right now.
Well, I hope you enjoy it. It's definitely, I think when you know the places that the story is coming from, and I think you'll get the themes that I'm exploring, especially like I think my queer audience and my neurodivergent audience and anyone who's kind of felt under the boot of patriarchy and compulsory heterosexuality will really hopefully connect with the story that I'm trying to tell.
Heck yeah. So how did you go about crafting it? You said you needed to come back to it when you were better, like technically. What does that mean?
Honestly, it probably came from a point of privilege of having some success in my career already, because my first few books, I was almost trained away from writing in the voice that I wanted to write in, just so that it was more accessible to more people. Like there was a lot of quote unquote like $1 million words that were like taken out because, you don't want people to be looking up too many words or, for the readability and can people read it quickly, which I feel like I still tend to lean on in my rom-coms more because I want them to feel more kind of popcorn and bingeable in that way. And for me, having grown up playing a lot of instruments, I kind of view the different stories as almost different genres of music that I'm playing. And so they sound different in my head. I want them to have kind of almost different theme songs in my mind. And this book was one where I really felt like, I wanted to just go for it and kind of take the gloves off a little bit more and tell the story exactly as I wanted to tell it, and not hold myself back to be like all of the questions of, is this going too far? And am I taking this in a direction, I shouldn't? And really just being like, I need to tell it this way. And because I've already have an audience who I feel like trusts me to take them on this journey, I feel like they'll be willing to kind of come with me in this new adventure. And so, yeah, for me, this was the first book where it was like a book that I just needed to write for myself. And all of my other books were books I loved and enjoyed writing, but I was definitely thinking more about the audience than the story itself at the time. You know, I was thinking, like, how is this going to be received? And is this right for the market? And like thinking probably more strategically about how to write the books. And this book was one that was just so deeply personal to me that I felt like I have to tell this story and I have to tell it this way. And so, in some ways, it feels like my first book in a way. You know, I feel very precious about it in a way that I haven't with a lot of my other books because it is so much just like, well, I gave it a go. This was exactly the story I wanted to tell. And hopefully, it will be received kind of in the nature it was written, but I have no idea how it will land with people. Yeah.
I'm just like grinning ear to ear. I can hear how excited you are about it, like in your voice.
I really care about this one a lot, yeah, which is kind of scary. You know, I think authors, we kind of, you know, when we can kind of emotionally distance ourselves, that might be almost healthy, I think, you know, to after you write the book, it's all just kind of bleeding onto the page in a lot of ways. And then you kind of have to shift into, I'm marketing a product, you know, like it's probably good to then be like have more of a thick skin and be more not as emotionally connected to the book. But this, it's been hard with this one because it came from such a deeply personal place and something that I've been thinking about for so long. So I think people will definitely feel a lot of me in this and a lot of my anger and rage and sadness and all of those things, as well as hopefully still telling like an adventure and a quest at the end of the day too.
Well, the gothic vibe definitely lends to being unhinged in your $1,000,000 words, so that's always a bonus.
Yeah, totally. I think I can pull it off a little bit more in the genre that it is.
So there's a lot of like dreams and nightmares, and they're going to hell. Like, how did you come up with those aspects specifically? Did you always want it to be kind of a dream world, or?
Yeah, well, so one of the first ideas came from a point in my life when I was just entering university, and I would fall asleep every night, kind of like in this state of I just moved to a new city, I didn't have any friends yet, had depression, I'm undiagnosed autistic and ADHD, and, you know, coming out and all of the things, all of the things at the same age. And every night I would kind of like fall asleep at night almost ritualistically to give my brain something to think about so that I could fall asleep. I would dream that I was in this other world where everything was, you know, I was just like lying in bed still with my eyes closed, but I was like in the arms of some beautiful woman, you know, and just like all of these like positive things that we were in a beautiful bedroom and kind of build out this fantasy dream world to help me fall asleep. And then one night as I was falling asleep, I had this kind of like anxiety, you know, when you kind of like start from a dream, like as you're starting to fall asleep and your body kind of jolts. And I had this moment of like, what if she was evil? And you know, what if she tricked me into getting here to this place? And then I thought, oh, that's a really cool idea.
Yeah.
Like I need to write that or something. So that's kind of was the first idea of like, you know, that teenage longing, and then also kind of exploring like how dreams can slip into nightmares and things like that. So definitely the world building very much plays in these kind of liminal spaces of things that, you know, like she's not always able to hear everything or see everything, and is encouraged to kind of like keep a very loose periphery to her, you know, don't focus too hard on anything, keep a soft gaze on the world, because if she tries to comprehend it too much, she might just go mad.
And how true that is of our real world as well.
Yeah. I honestly, I feel like I was talking to myself a little bit when I was saying like, don't let your kind of constant quest to understand everything stop you from moving forward. And so as they're going on this literal quest, I also am speaking to myself metaphorically in my own mind of like, you've got to keep taking steps forward, even if you don't fully comprehend everything around you all the time. You've got to kind of allow things to exist as both good and bad at the same time sometimes to keep moving.
Just let the whimsy be. Don't pay too much attention to whether it's out to get you. You'll find out. Also, I think this is the tagline for it. But what if she was evil? I keep coming back to that. But what if?
But what if?
So, is the story told from two perspectives, or is it just from one?
It's just told from one. So it's told from the main character's perspective. Her name's Prayer, and the nightmare she falls in love with is named Reverie. So it's all told from Prayer's perspective, very intentionally so, because there's a lot of things that Prayer doesn't know about her current circumstances at the start of the book that Reverie does know. So if it was told in dual point of view, then Reverie would probably give away some of the things that the reader is discovering right along with Prayer. So it's only told through her point of view, but you almost get multiple points of view without giving away spoilers by the end of the book through her understanding what's really going on.
That's interesting. My wheels are turning. I like that. Is it difficult because your romances are told from dual, right?
The romantasies are all told from single point of view, but they switch throughout. The River of Golden Bones, Golden Court series adds a new protagonist each book. So by the end, there's 3 protagonists, but each one has their own love story. So it's only told from one point of view of each love story, if that makes sense. Yeah, pretty much all of my rom-coms are dual point of view.
So it's not new to you, just doing the single perspective then.
Yeah, and also I like the kind of, especially as this character is kind of like descending into hell, like if there was somebody who already lived there and was like, oh yeah, that's like, that's Steve. It's just like, it doesn't seem as mysterious and exciting if somebody's like, this is just my day-to-day life and this is no big deal to me. You kind of want the hero kind of guiding you through this new world.
You need them unreliable and uneducated, just like you.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, was there anything else that inspired the story, like books or movies or anything like that?
Yeah. So, a few different things, actually. One is I've been a long time fan of Guillermo del Toro, and some of the Spanish language movies that he had been working on like way back in the day. But there was always this kind of like gothic element to it, even before he kind of did some of the ones we know him for now, like Frankenstein and things. So there was that. I kind of like always say if a Florence and the Machine song and a Guillermo del Toro movie had a baby, it would, like a sapphic fantasy baby, it would be Dreamslayer. And the same goes for, I, at the time when I was going through all this stuff, I was listening, like Florence and the Machine was like just kind of coming out, breaking out in like the British scene. And so like a lot of that kind of music, the kind of gothic, whimsical, sapphic in my mind, at least I read as,
Yeah.
and so all of that was like kind of happening. And at the time too, I was in university getting a degree in classical civilizations. And one of the courses we would take was mythology through the lens of classic literature. So I was reading a lot of like gothic books at the time too, like, Carmilla, Dracula. I was reading Jane Eyre and Picture of Dorian Gray and, like all of those sorts of books. And so I think some of that language is kind of like, you can kind of hear it a little bit in Dreamslayer as well, that kind of tonal gothic classic voice. So it's kind of like a hodgepodge of all of those sorts of things. Yeah.
It sounds like a perfect storm to me.
Yeah, a lot of twisty angst.
So did you start writing it back then, or was it just kind of all simmering and then you started writing it like more as of late?
It was mostly simmering. I usually have a few ideas that might just be like one or two kind of seeds of an idea, and then they all start to come together, and then at some point they just kind of demand to be told. So the only thing I really had was the idea of the kind of dream turning bad, dream falling asleep. And then also, and trigger warning for this, suicide. But I had a friend take her own life at the same time who I was very close with. And she was this beautiful, budding queer woman. And the first thing I wrote of the story was kind of a letter to her to kind of like help me move through that grief that still, even now, 20 years later, can, really gets me. And so the first kind of scenes that I wrote of this book were kind of like putting her in another world and her story continuing on. So that is all kind of like the first chapters that obviously have changed a lot over time as the story has grown. But yeah, those were like the first things that I wrote 20 years ago. And then kind of it just existed in a folder in the back burner of my mind. And the story, I kind of add details and scenes and seeds of ideas to it over time as time went on. but it just kind of like was there simmering in the corner. I kind of saw it, but didn't touch it. And then as we were pitching my third series with Harper Voyager, I kind of told my agent a few of these ideas, and this was one of them. And she was like, that one, let's do it. And so then it felt like, okay, it's time to really welcome this story back into my life and kind of go there again. And that's how it kind of came to be.
That is really beautiful, and I feel like it's a good snapshot of why people are storytellers. You know, it really helps you to work through it first, and then you share it, and it helps other people in similar situations go through it and process it. And I just think that's really beautiful, and I think that it sounds like you've just done it so well, and that's what it is to be a storyteller.
Yeah, totally. I mean, like, I think most of my books are an exploration of something that I just needed to figure out myself, like, and whether we even get to an answer or not is kind of not the point. It's just like, and I think it's the same with all art, even art that is kind of tropier by nature, like rom-coms tend to be. Like, you're still trying to figure something out with each book. But in particular, like, this kind of more dark romantasy is really much like tonally an exploration of things that I might not have been ready to get into until just now, And so for me, my whole life, like all of the stories I've told, it's so fascinating for me now to know that I'm autistic and have ADHD, because I look back on these stories I was writing as like a 13-year-old, and I'm like, oh, I was totally trying to figure that out, and I didn't have the language. Or like, something I wrote as a 16-year-old and being like, oh, I'm queer, and I had no idea, and like these were all explorations that I just like didn't have the capacity for at the time, and then they kind of pop back up again. So thematically, I feel like this is a story that's both about what happened 20 years ago, but also is very, very relevant to everything that's happening right now. And I think the kind of news and everything that's happening in our world as we speak is also very much like bleeding across the page too. It's of its time in a way that felt like, okay, we got to tell this story now.
That was gonna be my follow-up before, is if you had written some of it back then, what it felt like looking back on what would be some of your earliest writing, and how much you've changed, and what that feels like.
Yeah, I think my writing back then was probably more disciplined because I was in university. And also, when you're young, you have so much confidence that you're right in things, And so there was a lot more of that when I was at that age, that like, yes, this is good, and this is my art, and, all of these things, and so much confidence in my writing. And there are so many crutch words that I still have now, and things. So there's just certain things you just love. But my voice has evolved more into more of a vulnerable place where I don't have as many walls. I feel very safe in where I am and the confidence of getting older and things. And so I think that I'm willing to kind of really go there in a way that maybe I could only really do at a distance and through characters before. And now I'm willing to put a little bit more of that vulnerability into the story.
Well, it's the author's journey, right? And you wouldn't be here without them early, crutch words and discipline that eventually breaks into who you are now.
Yeah. And I think also like not letting myself get in the way of telling a good story. I think having worked for, a long time in wildlife biology and living in the jungle and having the practice of sitting around a campfire trying to keep people entertained and all sharing stories, and kind of like, I think authors tend to lean one way or the other, where they're really great at telling a story, but maybe don't have the technical skills to tell it beautifully. And then some who write so beautifully, but don't know how to do the story part as well, like the plot side of it as well. And my goal is hopefully I'm always aiming for the middle of, telling a beautiful story that is also engaging and entertaining and telling it well. And I feel like every year I am trying to do that better. And so, hopefully in a decade, the things I write now will seem reductive compared to a decade from now. And I kind of love that and embrace that as, we're just constantly growing.
In what is it like being kind of like, I think of it as like a hybrid author, you know, you're self-publishing, doing your own thing with some of your books, and then some of your other stories you're working with Harper Voyager.
You know, it's so interesting because they're so different and yet they both are very similar in ways that I think that people who only do one don't realize that like they're both a lot of work and a lot of hustle, but just in different areas. It's kind of like a pick your poison thing. And of course, my answer was both. Why not? Why not do all of them? It's like, would you rather have to like go back and forth with a publisher a bunch of times to kind of try and get something right that from the indie side you could get done very easily? Or, do you want to be on the phone with Amazon at 2 a.m. trying to get them to. So it's like there's hard parts of it, but also there's really joyful parts of it. I like the collaborative nature on both sides. And I think that the audience is different as well. So, like, the traditional audience finds you through different avenues than the indie audience does. And so, for me, I just want to chat with everybody. I want to connect with everyone. And especially with these kind of queer love stories, like, I'm hoping that they reach the people who are super keen to have them and find them in different places. So, yeah, I quite like and enjoy doing both. And I feel like they have different kind of rhythms to them. One is much faster paced, and I like that. I like the challenge of the kind of indie books, getting them out quickly. But I also love the kind of love and care that I can give to a trad book that takes, a couple of years to get to its final state. Like a Dreamslayer, I probably started writing 3 years ago and it's coming out in December. So there's something to that too. And I really enjoy being able to have the time and capacity to go back over it again and again and again and make it exactly as I want it to be. Whereas indie, at some point you've got to get that book out because your audience is waiting, and you don't have like the luxury of an advance to kind of hold you over till the next book comes out. So on both sides, like there's these kind of different hustles, but I love them both, and I think that they're like a classic ADHD. I just want to be challenged in every way.
Well, it sounds like you're definitely doing that. And one thing in particular I wanted to ask you about with this one was the cover, because it's so freaking beautiful. Were you able to have any input on it? Like you say, there's certain things you want to make sure are just right. Was that something you were able to do with that?
Credit goes to my editor, David Pomerico, for suggesting a people-based cover for this one. Like, it's totally a different shift. All my other books thus far with them have all been more kind of typography object-based covers. And I feel like the switch to the people-based cover really lends itself more to the Gothic genre. It was his idea. And then they gave me like 4 or 5 artists to pick from to design the cover. And then I got to pick Melanie Delon, who did the art and is just an incredible artist. And then there was like 4 or 5 different sketches of the positions of them. Like there was one where it was just Prayer kind of holding the legs of the statue. And there was like one kind of back to back. But I really loved the pose that they're in on the Dreamslayer cover. And I also liked that you kind of see the statue of Reverie's face and that that it's a woman, so that like straight off the bat you can see that it's a sapphic book, because I think if you just see the legs you don't know. And so I wanted really clear that this is like a dark gothic sapphic book, like it, I feel like it really conveys everything that we're trying to tell people really quickly with the tone and kind of the design of the cover. And they were just so supportive and on board with that, so I was really lucky that there was no kind of like disagreements. I think they really got the tone off the bat.
I have to agree. My first thought seeing it, and I'm not saying this is right, wrong, or whatever, but like my first thought was Titanic gone wrong.
Yes.
With lesbians. That was my thought.
Oh my god. I love that. Get the like whistle out. It's totally a tiny flute thing. Yes, like I can hear the Celine Dion playing over
Yes.
this whole story. It is very kind of sweeping, longing, yearning, sad, and beautiful.
Tragic.
Yes, yeah, very tragic. I feel like the cover does so much of the heavy lifting of promising what is inside the book that I'm hopeful that people won't be like, what is going on when they read this and being like, this is so messed up and I wasn't prepared for it to be this sad. And, like, I hope they see the cover and they're like prepared for the vibes ahead of time.
Yeah, I definitely think they will be. If they're not, then I don't know. You gotta open your eyes a little bit more because that is tragic lawning.
With all of my socials, I'm really trying to like warn people this is a different book than my other fantasy books, Like you still get my voice and a lot of there's still some fun in the world. There's some comedic relief and things, but and especially if you're coming from this for my rom-coms, like you need to be very prepared that this is a world. So yeah.
Yeah, 180.
Yeah. I expect a few all caps DMs.
Well, they'll be like happy mad, hopefully,
I hope so. I mean, like, so far of the, like, there's only been a few people who've had an arc yet, and there's been a lot of, it's been so lovely to see, like, 5 stars and things like that, but all the reviews are like, this is so sad and messed up. 5 stars.
Yeah.
Okay, hopefully
that's what you want. That is peak right there.
That's exactly what I was going for. Is like, I hope people are willing to have me stomp all over their hearts and will enjoy it.
Mission success. Besides stomping out people's hearts, is there anything that you hope readers take away from this story?
I guess with all my books, I hope that people feel like they're not alone and that they feel seen in these worlds. For better or worse, because a lot of bad things happen to these characters, but also like just, I wrote Prayer as an autistic character, and I hope that my autistic readers feel seen in her journey. And also just everyone who feels angry at the state of the world feels like validated in the things that are happening in the story and feels seen in them. And sometimes I think we, or at least I, rely on fantasy and fiction to be able to explore things that are happening right now, because the contemporary almost, I feel like, is harder to explore those themes because they're happening in real time. And sometimes I feel like being able to put it in this other world allows us to see it in a different way and be able to kind of pick it apart in different ways. And so I think for me, whenever I've been going through really hard times in my life, having someone mirror that back to me and express that they see and understand it and that they've felt it too. And I think in a very neurodivergent way of us sharing our own stories to show that we empathize with the story that somebody has told us. I hope that people have that kind of catharsis with the book.
By the sounds of it, the chosen few are definitely feeling that way.
Yeah, hopefully.
On a different note, speaking of rom-coms, you have co-written a lot of books with K.L. Morrison. And you have 2 new stories coming out together. Is it much different writing alone? Do you miss her? Or, is it nice to kind of do your own thing and then get back together?
I mean, I always miss her because we're long distance best friends. She's actually coming in like 2 weeks and I'm so excited. Like I can't wait to see her. I feel like kind of terminally in need of seeing her at this point where like I can't function until she gets here. Yes, so I wish we could in some ways do almost everything together. There's like, I do enjoy, like, Dreamslayer had to be like my story because it's so personal to me. And I like the kind of, I feel like because we have these lighthearted co-authored stories, it gives me the ability to kind of explore deeper in the more kind of raw and vulnerable dark fantasy spaces because I have an outlet for all like the joy now. And so it's definitely led to a kind of greater divergence of my 2 pen names. But I have so much fun writing with her. And I think there's something when you're writing for a specific person and to make that person laugh, and to entertain one person through, it's such a narrow lens that I think that people really enjoy it. And I think they can feel the joy in the creation of the stories. I think that really resonates with them because it's such a joyful process writing together. And so I think there's something to that they get a little piece of that joy when they read the books.
Even just like your marketing together that you guys do, you do such funny videos and posts, and like the books are so fun, and it is like, it's just pure joy whenever you 2 are involved.
Thank you. I actually have like 200 TikTok sounds saved for when she comes to visit. I'm like, we're gonna do this, and we have all these plans, and it's gonna be so much fun. And I do think you're right. Like, people can tell that, like, even if nobody watches the videos, we would have still made them because we just had so much fun. And now we're at a point where we like really struggle to market solo because it's so much more fun marketing together, in the same way that I think bands probably have more fun than touring solo artists, right? Like it's always more fun to have a buddy when you're doing all these things. So yeah, I'm very much looking forward to her visit, and we're gonna see each other twice this year because I'm going over for Rare Florence in Italy, and so I'll go visit her in the Netherlands as well. And our goal is to hopefully one day be able to be selling enough of our co-author books that we can afford flights to see each other twice a year, every year, forever is the goal.
Ultimate goals. That's amazing. Your marketing game really is, like, amazing, though, even when it's just for your stuff. Like, do you have any advice for authors, aka me, when you're struggling and get burnt out to come up with new stuff? Because I find it can be really hard.
Yeah, I'm only now just starting to get myself more organized with that. And a lot of that is actually I've relied on other people too. Like, I have an amazing assistant who helps me out with a lot of the graphics. We have this great graphic like subscription service, the Word Weavership, shout out, which is awesome, and that has helped me tremendously because I have the ADHD too much gene of I just want to add more and more and more to my graphics until they're completely unreadable. And I've kind of trained myself out of that a little bit with Canva and things, but make your own template and then use it a bunch. I think that's one of the things that we forget because we've seen it. We think everybody's seen it, and that's not the case. And so putting a little twist on something you've already done, you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. I kind of view social media as kind of like the single-use plastic of marketing. Like, you post something and then it doesn't exist 24 hours later. Everybody's forgotten about it. So if you're spending more than a couple of minutes on that post, you're wasting your time, and in my opinion, unless you can use it again and again over the course of, several months in different ways by just tweaking one or two things or putting a different cover on it or something that will take you only a couple of minutes, then you're starting to see more value in that. And also, I think sometimes we get in our own heads too much, and just posting like a selfie or a photo of your book can do more than like a really complicated graphic that took 20 minutes to make. So yeah, like mixing it up and also being aware that your audience will still be there when you need to take breaks. I think we're all in fear of like, if not now, I'll lose everyone and everything will go away and it'll kind of fall through my fingers if I'm not constantly hustling and grinding. And actually it is okay to take breaks and take time off of social media and come back to it again. And don't let the algorithms kind of make you think that you have to be trapped in this never-ending cycle.
You just stabbed me in the heart like 3 times.
I'm sorry.
It's so true though, and I spend so much time on a graphic and then it just like does nothing, and then something I don't really like take as much time on or is more honest and personal does a lot better.
Yep.
And I have a tendency to not reuse stuff, and I feel like that would help as well. So here are my 3 swords sticking out on my chest, and I'm gonna try to take them out.
Reuse your content. Don't be afraid to reuse your content because it's serving it to different people, right? It's the first time that person's seen it. You could post it probably like 10 times and different people will see it each time. And I'm always surprised when I'm like, I've spent maybe 9 months telling people about a book every day on social media, and still there will be someone who will be like, I didn't know you had a new book, didn't know you had a new book out. So it's like, don't be afraid because you're not like, I think we think that we're screaming the same information at people again and again, but we're not. It's like we're telling new people information and we're welcoming them in to join us. And I think having that more spirit of like, we're not putting anything on people, we're just welcoming them to be a part of it.
All right, I'm gonna try this. I'm gonna say, AK told me.
Okay. Yep, you got it.
So Dreamslayer is a trilogy. So is that what's next for you, to dive back into it, or are you working on something else?
Oh yeah. I don't know if I'm even allowed. I haven't even told my publisher what the second book is titled. So maybe I shouldn't say because it might change. But right now in my head, I'm calling it Idolatrous. It is due in August. So that's not far away. And it's mostly written. I like to draft and then leave it for a bit and draft and leave it for a bit and kind of layer in more and more. So I'm about to return to it again and kind of bulk it out a bit more and add in some scenes that I hadn't really conceptualized yet. I like to go away and just kind of like listen to like sad music and think about the story and like classic looking out a raining window
Yes.
moment. And then more ideas will kind of come to me through like listening to music and going for walks and, shower ideas and stuff. And then the story becomes full and then it's like kind of ready to go. And then it's more about making it beautiful and making sure I'm telling the story the way I want to. So I'm kind of more in that phase now.
Well, that's awesome. I'm really looking forward to it. This just made me really excited, and I'm excited for you and Kale's next books, and I'm just so happy for you guys. This is amazing.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Where can listeners find out more about you and your books?
Yeah, so you can check me out at akmulford.com or allykmulford.com. I'm on Instagram at akmulford and on TikTok at akmulfordauthor.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me. This has been awesome.
It was such a great chat. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening, and we'll be back next week with more Right Here, Right Queer.